There are times when I sit up here and I look out at the congregation and I see love and I see oneness. And I see that today. When I'm sitting here, I'm just looking at each human being and going, God, here's a divine being. And it's feeling, maybe with the energy that's going on in the world right now, we need to pay more attention to that. That we are healthy and well, that we are divine beings, and that we are love. And it's good to see. I'm glad you're all here so I can experience that. So all glory is given to God, the great communicator. And before I start the talk, let me start with a statement about faith. Ernest Holmes stated this in his manuscript called The Holmes Papers, Ideas of Powers. And he states, there is a power greater than we are, and we can use it. It is creative. It can do anything, and it responds to our belief in it. But our belief in it has to be a belief that it is now operating, that it has always operated and will always operate. Someone will say, well, to know that, this calls for faith. Well, beloveds, all life calls for faith, in fact. I thought the other day that if you and I had the same faith that an electrician has, we would be better metaphysicians. Religious people do not have quite the faith that scientists have. When they have demonstrated a principle, there's no longer any question in their mind about it being true. Well, when I think about this, I believe that it's true, about faith. So the question for us is, why do we not always demonstrate our principles in our life with trust? That's because there's so much around us that interferes with our ability to have that pure faith, to know the power that is God operating through us, and that what we are praying or treating for in our life is done here and now. We need to know that all the time. It's done now, not sometime in the future. We let statistics get in the way. Oh, 50% of the country is doing this or all that. Oh my God, we're not doing it right. We let our personal limitations get in the way. We let our beliefs about time get in the way. We let our past evidence of our lives. Oh, look what happened last time that I was in this situation. I know that this power works because I've used it in my life. And still, I have to tell you, sometimes I find myself doubting. Human mind comes up, fear comes up. And at those times I remember, I want to return to prayer. And I have to pray for the faith that I need inside. And I try to be in this very moment, letting go of the past and the future, knowing that this power works right now all the time. And the important thing is, I don't make it work. I let it work through me. And I remember that when an electrician flips a switch, there are those occasions when the light doesn't come on. Do they get in fear because the light's no longer shining? No, they have to see where it's burned out. The socket is faulty, the power's off to the building. They fix the problem and flip the switch again. So, I ask you, why do we not see the demonstration, or when you do not see the demonstration you expect, remember to pray again. Have faith that prayer is effective. And use that to fix the problem in yourself right now, changing your thought, and then flip the switch of the light on again, and there you are, back one with God. So, that's the end. To remind you of the ending statement from the last talk, which was part one, and I want to tell you, I really want you to listen to this because it's part two of talking about the body, and there's a lot of important information in here. We have learned that spirit is the absolute being, that it is the only one thing in the universe which has self-knowingness, volition, choice, or will. The soul is the servant of spirit, which is God, and it has no choice and no purpose other than to execute the purpose given it, which means God does the doing. When I've talked to you about be, do, have, you connect to the being, let God do the doing. That's what it's here for. The spirit of the universe cannot change because being all that it is, there is nothing for it to change into. It is already all. The soul of the universe must obey the will of the spirit, or God. And the body of the universe cannot help but change. This is what constitutes the eternal activity of spirit within itself. The spirit presses itself into form, into this body, or any creation at all, because creation is eternally going on. Think about that with your own life. What are you creating right now in your life? All that you want? Are you even aware that you are the creator of what goes on in your life? Since spirit must be manifest in something in order to be conscious, there must be a way in which it manifests, and there must be a manifestation. So, beloveds, here we have the soul, which comes from God, our physical body, and body is the manifestation, soul is the way into it. It's the law by which it manifests in our bodies, in our creations, in all ways. So, let's continue with part 2. Our physical body is like other physical manifestations. The idea of a body is an image derived from the fountain of all ideas. When you think of all the ideas that God has about everything that's created in this world, in this universe, and universes beyond it, knowing that form or body, whatever that form is a manifestation from the substance of all forms. That means we need to look at the forms of birds, the different kinds of fish and animals and plants and humans. If we could look at every human being and say how beautiful you are because God is expressing itself through you, just like we see with the other rest of it. All bodies are made of the same stuff. This one stuff is an inanimate and infinite spirit, and it is equally distributed in the universe. There is no place where God is not. Much like the modern idea of the ether of space that I talked about a while ago, it is the nature of this stuff, or of God's energy, to make form, to create over and over and over again. Therefore, form is entirely in the realm of effect, which means outside. We have the cause inside, our thoughts, our emotions, the effect outside. Form comes and goes, bodies change, but it is not the self-knowing. Form is within the formless. It is not an illusion. Even when it is in the form of disease, it then represents a false conclusion. I want you to hear that. It's not an illusion, but when it's in the form of disease, it represents a false conclusion, meaning the thought needs to be changed. But it is real as it's supposed to be, so we don't judge it. We don't judge ourselves no matter what. If the formless did not take form, then spirit would never arrive at any part of self-realization. The formless takes form in what we call time. We're here in time in this universe. It's only something we make up because it's a sequence of events in a unity of wholeness. If we could really get connected to the wholeness of all that there is, then we see that we are one with people halfway across the world or anything that's going on. There is no separation. We can feel the oneness here in our lives right now. It's past. It's a recollection of things. Which time is recollection, it's attention, it's anticipation, a past, present, and future. Time is never a thing of itself. But the timeless, if it did not manifest in what we call time, it would never come to fruition. So therefore, we have form, and we have time, and we have what we call space, which is never a thing of itself, but the possibility of the outline of what we're creating. If there were no outline of the body and the form, we would walk through each other without recognition, because we would be not solid like we feel we are at this time. But actually all we are is energy. If we can see that in ourselves, that all this stuff is energy, it vibrates and moves all the time. And if we were really aware of that, we could walk through each other's bodies just saying, this is who I am. Form is temporary, but mind is eternal. Effect is that which did not make itself, but it must have a power back of it, causing it to be, which we call our thoughts. Right now is the most of what creates our life. All manifestation, all the body is effect, and it is subject to the cause, meaning we can always change the outside manifestation or the creation that we have created. And we need to know that the Creator is greater than His creation. God is greater than each of us individually, but God is within us. But still, God is the creator of all that there is. So we want to pay attention to God all the time, not necessarily just the creation. Everything we see, everything we touch and taste and feel, hear, grasp with our physical senses is an effect. As it says in the Bible, things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. When we see, what we see comes from that which we do not see. What does that mean? We got to start paying attention because we want to see as God sees. I've talked about that before too, and God sees on a totally different level than we do. If self-knowingness is in spirit, and if the law which executes the volition of spirit is entirely subconscious or subjective to the will of the spirit, it follows that both cause and effect are spiritual as well. Involved within the idea which the Spirit drops into the medium, meaning there's this energy, this medium plane that God creates and drops into. We have been dropped into a medium. We came into this form from that. Spirit never thinks of methods or processes for that which the Spirit involves, because it must evolve. Everything with God is evolving all the time. We are evolving all the time. The contemplation of Spirit, the self-knowingness of God, produces involution, going inward. Evolution is the passing of thought into manifestation. So if we could talk about evolution, it's just a thought. It's a thought that we had that we can create something if we wish outside of ourselves. And another one, and another one. So to put it another way, all, if we use the word all, is infinite being. Everything is God. All is eternally becoming. And it's an infinite being in infinite knowingness. So again, easy thing. All there is the one power, the one mind, which is God. And it is continually creating things from its idea, including us. We had the idea of coming into this physical form. And so the infinite knowingness, which is another word we can use for God, produces what's called involution through the self-contemplation of Spirit when we think about God, when we meditate upon God. Then we have a contemplation. And the word of the Bible, it says, creation is made manifest when we contemplate Spirit, when we go inside ourselves and have the positive thoughts. That's evolution. It's the process. It's the way. It's the time and the experience that transpires as thought. So we have thought in every moment of our lives. Or intelligence. We call it intelligence. Or we could call it an idea. Or we could call it contemplation. And they all, those words and forms, pass from abstract being into concrete expression. So we're creating again all the time, beloveds. We do not deny, evolution is not creating intelligence. Intelligence is projecting evolution. We do not deny the theory of evolution. We affirm its cause to be intelligence, which is God, operating as consciousness and law. Again, the evolution of growth of everything in there is God's creating over and over again. The stuff out of which our human bodies are made is the same etheric substance from which all things are made, because it comes from God. It's all the same. The one mind conceives all things. And from unity, which we talk about here, which is in back of all things through the one law. Remember, I had this diagram out here one time and talked about the consciousness of God going through the soul, which is law, into form of the body. It's the medium of all action. And then multiplicity is manifested. Everybody that's out there is created, is manifested. But that doesn't separate us from the unity of the whole. We are part of the one, even though we look like we're separate from one another. When we realize that we are dealing with an infinite intelligence and an infinite law within this intelligence, we see that no limit should be placed upon the creative principle, or God. There's no limits on God's creation, God's ideas of things. If we could understand absolute causation, we perceive it to be pure intelligence, and I mean a capital I, it, like God. Operating through perfect law, there's the causation, there's God operating through the soul or law and producing effects which live and have their being, not by virtue of an isolated life, but by reason of a universal unity. We are all creating the same, all the time. There is no difference between any of us, because this universal unity permeates all things. God is everywhere, in everything. Remember how I stated to you the talk a few weeks ago about the concept of universal includes far-reaching past the horizons of our five senses, further than the planets, the moon, and the stars. That is unity and oneness. And that causes us to really think a lot about how God creates, how God has an idea and says it's manifested here, way out, far away from us. All the time creation is going on. So we need to pay attention to that, don't you think? And that helps us wake up more to that we're not alone. We're here one with everybody. We should see then that this world of multiplicity, or all the human beings, the divine beings, is deep-rooted in a universe of unity. Therefore, nothing happens by chance. There are no accidents. Everything is created. Everything has a purpose and a reason for being. We live under a government of law, from the vast planetary system, think of the vast planetary system, to just a garden of roses. From the archangel or the Christ to the saint and the sinner, through good and what is called evil. That's the government of law. Through cosmic activities and in human destinies, we behold the vast objective panorama of invisible but active subjective causes. How wonderful it is to know that we can visualize the vast kingdom of God every time we look at another human being, knowing that God is all in that person and everybody. We should not separate our life from living. We're here to live our life. We're here, we don't want to separate spirit from matter, which is our physical body. We don't want to separate divine principle from a universal creation because of three words. God is all. Want to say that with me? God is all the time. It helps me know that truth when my mind wants to keep creating something different. We know that God is by itself and is in everything that there is. For instance, the gardener finds a divine idea concealed in the seed. Then loosed into action, the idea produces a plant. The geologist finds the imprint of invisible forces in the rock. The evolutionist reads the history of cosmic activities on this planet as he deciphers the unfolding of an intelligent life force, carrying creation forward, which is the production of a self-conscious life. The scientist finds an energy concealed in the atom, and the spiritual genius discloses an intuitive knowledge, something that's been hidden, which can be accounted for only on the theory that we live in the lap of an infinite intelligence. Let me say that again. We live in the lap of an infinite intelligence. What does that mean? We're sitting on the lap. That God is what?
All is well.
All is well. We're in the lap of infinite intelligence. We're in the lap of health and wellness, of wholeness. And this word I said earlier, which was what? Richness, riches, opulence. Thank you. I love that word. That we're living in the opulence of life of intelligence. Are we creating that opulent life? If we're not, what's holding us back? Emerson tells us that nature is spirit reduced in its greatest thinness. A teacher named Spinoza says that mind and matter are the very same things. Jesus proclaimed that the very words he spoke were spirit and were life. We're talking about oneness through all these things, folks. Robert Brown in Ronning writes of the spark, which we may desecrate but never quite lose. And he further announces that all people are gods. Wadsworth sings that the heaven is the nature home of all mankind. Tennyson explains that there were things wrought by prayer more than this world dreams of. And Shakespeare perceives sermons in stones and God in everything. We get to do that. We need to start waking up and seeing God in everything that we do, just like everybody else that I named, the scientists and the evolutionists and the authors and the writers. We have that opportunity, however, to express it. We are on the verge of disclosing a spiritual universe, beloveds. That's what's going on in our lives right now. And we will ultimately conclude that what we call the physical universe is a spontaneous emergence of God through us, through evolution and inner forces that cannot be totally explained, but must be accepted. How then can we doubt that the very mind which we now use is the same infinite principle from which all life draws its power? There is no separation. Did you get that statement? How can we doubt that the very mind we now use is the same infinite principle from which all life draws its power? And is its intelligence to express? So we're here to express as well. The furtherance of evolution depends upon our ability to sense a unity with nature and our forces, to know that we're not separate from anything out there in nature. And when the knowledge of this unity comes alike to all of us, And I like this statement here. When the knowledge of this oneness comes to us, the thread of armies will cease and the bugle call will echo the soft notes of brotherly love. Wouldn't that be great if we had that experiencing in the world? We have the opportunity to create that, beloveds. That's what this is all about. Suppose we should be able to view the world not as we do now from one plane, but from 10 different planes. What would happen? Anybody have an idea?
Be overwhelmed.
You could be overwhelmed. It would be a lot different, but you would see it from 10 different planes. And see, there's a lot of different planes in consciousness out there. The present hypothesis of science is that ether is more solid than matter. And this means that there could be a form within the very form that one's body now occupies in space. Is there another form inside your form? There might be immutable bodies, each within the other, and each would be just as real as the one we think we occupy. So there's more going on than what we can believe right now. The universe as we see it is not even a fractional part of the whole universe that actually is. The eyes have not seen or heard because it only sees in one plane and only in one part. Do you get that? You're only seeing what you've been taught, what you've taken on. That's how you can see. Now, each of us individually sees things different. We can sit down and when I do work with clients for divorce and separation, they come in separately. And I'll tell me your story, and they'll tell me the story about what went on. And then I hear the other person. I was like, were you with that other person? It's so totally different because we have different ways of how we see things that goes on in our life. And it means we have to change our consciousness. When this physical body is no longer a fit instrument through which to function, another one may be already there for you. The physical disappearance of Jesus after his resurrection was the result of this spiritualization of his consciousness. When he did that, it so quickened his mentality that his body disintegrated and his followers could not see him because he was on another level. Now, planes are not places, beloveds. They are states of consciousness. We are moving through the fourth dimension into the fifth dimension. That's what we're talking about. It's going to be a level of consciousness. We're going to see things differently from a higher viewpoint than we did in the third dimension and in the fourth that we went through. Everything in our life is consciousness. Everything that goes on happens from our consciousness. It is apparent that spirit can know nothing outside of itself, that whatever the spirit knows must be a definite mental image, concept, or idea in the consciousness of the spirit. Is it clear that the law can never say, I will not? No. It would never do that. It can only act as instructed, but that's from God. It is clear that as the spirit lets fall the form of thoughts into the soul or the universe, these thoughts must manifest as things. So, God is having ideas all the time, creating things and putting ideas in our mind that we get to create in our life. And what do we create? Form, body, or whatever it is that we're trying to manifest. As we look at the many millions of forms of all the different shapes and colors in the world, and we know, as I've said, that they all come from the one stuff, are we not compelled to accept the fact that there is a specific cause, a concrete mental image in back of every idea or thing? It's called a divine mental picture. God is the divine mental picture inside of you, creating your life for you. In the subjective world, there must be a correspondence of everything in the objective world. And since it is a receptive or plastic substance, that correspondence can find its initial starting point only in intelligence. Therefore, intelligence is the ultimate creative agency of the universe. God is the intelligence. God is the only one that's ultimately creating everything. So to end this talk, I want to remind you how I've said about the four bodies that we have here. We have the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, all of them wrapped up in the body of God. And we want to know that the physical body is the body of communication.
There you go.
Okay. It's always communicating to us. And what is it communicating? When we think we've gotten sick, it's communicating something to us. We need to look at it and say, what am I feeling? What's going on here? Well, what are we communicating is our thoughts, which are the body of creation. All of our thoughts create for us, right? and our emotional body, which our emotions attract to us. So we're creating and attracting to us. As a child, we're living in this body here. We feel everything that goes on, and we have thoughts then that we take on about ourselves. I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm bad, whatever it is that we take on as a child. Well, we don't want to hold those very long, so what we do is we stuff them in here, in our physical body. And at some point, our physical body goes, I don't want that. I'm waiting for God to express through me. I want more of the light and the love and everything that I'm supposed to have. But I'm being stopped by these negative thoughts and emotions. We need to clear out the physical body so we're not sick, so we're not separate, so we're not creating the things that we don't want. Because that's what we're here to do, beloveds, create. And we're creating through the form which is called the body. So I want you to know that the mind and the soul must work together if we are to continue to experience true bliss. Try not to spend too much time exclusively in your mind. It is a magnificent tool, but it has a limited perspective. Try not to spend too much time exclusively in your soul. It has a much wider perspective, but you cannot negotiate physical life from only that place. If you could, you would not have been given a mind. So here's the trick with both of those. What is it? Balance. Spend some time each day nourishing and exercising the mind and the soul. You know how to do both. It's inside of you. So do it, starting now. Okay? Namaste.